Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. And just for interest, Luke here uses some familiar traditional story backgrounds that read pretty much the same way, including 4th Maccabees chapter 4. This is a familiar pattern of events and the way they're described, so he's using a certain style. Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. Went to the high priest and asked for letters. These would be letters of recommendation to the synagogues in Damascus. So Paul evidently was not known in Damascus and needed a letter of recommendation to be accepted there. So that if he found any there who belonged to the way, that's an interesting expression. Luke calls it the way. Hodos, H-O-D-O-S is the transliteration. Hodos, or road, or way. That'd be the road church. Along on the road. Oh, road again? Okay, to the road. Whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. So we know the story. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. And what's a light from heaven? One of the theophany, one of the symbols of the theophany, God's presence. He fell to the ground, heard a voice say, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Exodus 3:3, if you will, I read. Moses, Moses, why do you? And then Exodus 19:16 through 20 is similar too. What do you think of who was Saul persecuting, first of all?
Jesus.
Yeah, but
Jesus.
literally, figuratively?
He's killing people,
Church.
killing Christians.
Aha, you
Well,
notice?
you know, he had earlier said, if you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me.
So we see
Oh,
Jesus'
so-
connection to his people. I think it just impresses me, Jesus' identification with us, that if what's done to us is done to him. He's right there with us. In fact, I think a strong argument can be made in the book of 1 Corinthians, that for Paul, the risen Lord is the church. Well, there's just no way. I'm not saying he says that in all of his epistles, but he makes a real point of the risen Lord is the church. And that is his body. He is here. And we need his mind, for we are his body. Anyway, powerful statement there. Who are you, Lord? Saul asked. What do you think of that statement? It is the key. But at this time, Paul recognizes a theophany. I mean, good grief, the man knows the Old Testament, right?
Yep.
He knows a theophany when he sees one. The Lord is appearing to him. He knows it's the Lord. Now, what's going to shock the heck out of him is that the Lord is Jesus.
Yeah.
But he knows it's the Lord. Who are you, Lord? Saul asked. And then the great, always in Greek, Agoni, how do you pronounce it? I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting, he replied. As Paul said, or as Jesus said to his disciples in Luke 10:16, when they reject you, they reject me. He said, if they reject you as my disciples, they reject me. I am Jesus whom you are persecuting, he replied. Now get up and go into the city. That sounds, I'd call that a commissioning. Get up and go. That would make a great title of a sermon, I think.
Yeah.
Get up
Get up
and
and
go.
go.
I think now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. Must do. So the men traveling with Saul stood there speechless. They heard the sound but did not see anyone. Of course, when the story gets retold in Acts 22:9, just the opposite happens. But you always say, at least couldn't you keep your story straight? But I would look for other. If Luke tells the same story differently, I would want to ask some questions about why. So he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. They led him by the hand to Damascus. For 3 days he was blind and did not eat or drink anything. It's kind of a Jewish piety thing of a holy period of transition, or in Jewish piety, you fasted and prayed to seek a revelation from God. And I think that's exactly what Saul is doing. He is seeking what's this about? And it's a very humbling thing. But don't you get the feeling that Saul was in his heart a humble man? I mean, he loved God. He just was totally, didn't get it straight. But there's no question about his zeal for God, is there? And he wants to obey God, and so this is a very, very troubling time, and he's humbling himself and praying, fasting. He's blind. Wow. Doesn't this kind of remind you of almost like Pentecost, when he said, you killed the Lord and the Messiah? And now Paul has suddenly found out that he has killed the body of the Lord and the Messiah. Unbelievable. What do you go through? What do you go through when you do that? Now, if you've read a lot of books on Paul, you know that a lot of them comment that he was schizophrenic and had multiple personality disorder, and because of the shock, and he was never quite the same. And they use some of Paul's rhetoric, I think, really misuse it. Yea, though I seek to do good, but I do evil, and the present. That's rhetoric. That's not a psychological self-evaluation. That's rhetoric. I think Saul was pretty healthy. I mean, I read things like, I'm Saul, I'm son of Benjamin, Pharisee of the Pharisees, zealous with the law, and all this and that. He doesn't seem to be all choked up with remorse and convoluted about a lot of stuff. He's the one who said, after all, I put it all down, accounting it rubbish, I move on, press on toward the high calling. That's a pretty healthy outlook. I see it coming. He's a tough cookie, man. He's just a tough cookie. So there he was. In Damascus, there was a disciple. Now Luke uses the word methatese, a disciple named Ananias. The Lord called him in a vision. Luke loves visions because he uses visions to reveal a lot of his plot and a lot of his story. Yes, Lord, he answered. The Lord told him, go to the house of Judas on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. In a vision, he has seen a man named Ananias come and place his hands on him to restore his foot. Lord, Ananias said, are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind? What? I have heard many reports about this man and all the harm he has done to your saints. Hagioi, holy ones. And he has come here with authority, exousia, from the chief priest to arrest all who call on your name. But the Lord said to Ananias, go. This man is my chosen instrument. Literally, the Greek literally says, a vessel of election for me. My chosen instrument to carry or to bear my name before the Gentiles. Now, the word is ethne. And the translators always struggle on how to translate it, whether it means nations, which it can mean, or whether it means Gentiles. Here, the translators obviously believe in context it's specifically referring to Gentiles, so they translate it that way. Before the Gentiles and their kings, and before the people of Israel. Israel is not left out. Very important for us. And I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. Just like Moses, just like Jesus, just like the suffering servant poems of Isaiah, he must suffer. So this sort of becomes a programmatic prophecy for Saul, doesn't it? Sort of like his Acts 1:8. You're going to go to the Gentiles and their kings, also before the people of Israel, and you're going to suffer. Say, Lord, what was that last point? We got to have that one. Can't I just take the verse 3? Nope. You suffer.